Assalamu alaikum. In this demo, I will be discussing how to connect to a public RDS instance using Lambda functions. Alright, so I have already created my RDS, my database, RDS database, and my function is ready as well. But I'll go over the steps briefly. So let's have a look at the RDS. Alright, so let's go to databases and let's create a miniature database. Yeah, I don't know why this is taking a lot of time. Okay, so by default, we can use these RDS is for relational databases only, and we can use MySQL to create our database. Excuse me. And we can select the version that we're gonna use for MySQL, and we're gonna use a free tier. Alright, so one of the important things over here is that, okay, we're gonna give our database a name. It can be anything. I'd call it SADDB because okay, my database is already there. Okay, now we have to define the password with the username and password for the login, and then at the end in the connectivity portion, one of the most important things is that even though apparently we have a number of VPCs available, but we can only connect to those VPCs that have alright, so have a look at this. This is demosat VPC. Now, as this VPC doesn't have a subnet group, I cannot use this this VPC to in order to deploy my RDS instance, and I'll have to create a subnet group. So let's choose this one. This over here, this subnet group is already created. So what exactly is a subnet group? So a subnet group is essentially uh, has yeah subnet group essentially is a group of subnets which have been deployed in at least two AZs for high availability, right? They can be either public or private depending on the on my configuration and the and the specified requirement. So in my case, as I'm working with a publicly accessible RDS instance, uh, so the both of my subnets are public, and I've made a subnet group and I've made a subnet group of them. And oh yeah, and this subnet group can only be created in the RDS console, for example. Okay, let me have a look. Okay, so have a look over here. Over here in our VPC, we do not have the option to create subnet groups. We only have the option to create subnet groups in the RDS console, right? And this is my VPC structure where where I have two public subnets, public subnet 1, public subnet 2, and I have two route tables associated with them. Both of which can access the internet gateway. You can see that this internet gateway is connected to the both of these route tables. Sorry, both of these subnets. And of course, the path that we define is going to be via the route table, right? And this is the main route table. All right, so after we create our instance, we can now have a look at the settings and we can create our instance. So this instance is already there. Okay, so what we need is the endpoint. Yeah, here is the endpoint, and and now we need to connect it to our database. So, for example, okay, so one of the problems that happened was that I was not able to connect it with my own database, with either with MySQL Workbench or dbeaver. But I'm going to show the process. For example, I'm going to create a new connection, and connection name is going to be, and over here we're going to put our endpoint. Sorry, I forgot to copy it. We put our endpoint. The port is going to be 3306. This is going to be our, and we're going to type our password over here. Then of course we can test our connection. However, and then after testing our connection, we can create our database. However, as my ports are blocked, port 3306 and the number of other ports, I was not able to create a database, connect to my database, connect to my RDS from MySQL Workbench, right? So for that step, I used someone else's laptop to create the database, and then I'm going to query it from the Lambda function that I've just created. So this is my Lambda function. Sorry, this is my database where I've created a transactions table where we have transactions ID as a primary key, and we have an amount, for example, what amount that transaction is for, and then we have a transaction type, which can either be purchase or refund, right? And these are the three values that I've inserted over there. Now let me show you my Lambda function. All right, so for this Lambda function, I'm using the Python library called PyMySQL, so that I may be able to query my database. And in order to connect to that database, we have to define some parameters, which are as follows: which is the endpoint, the password, and the username, and of course the database name as well. Now we're going to connect to this my database using PyMySQL, and of course we're gonna call this and the query that we are running over here is select is like select all from the transaction table. Let me show you the table. So this is the table. Yeah, and another thing is that because PyMySQL is not supported by AWS itself, I downloaded this function from PyMySQL from PyPy, and then packaged and made it into a package, and then uploaded it via zip file into this into for my Lambda. Before that, I tried to do so with my own internal using Visual Studio, but I don't know. Even though I've done the steps correctly, but I was not able to call PyMySQL. Even though PyMySQL does not have a dependency for Linux or other Windows. The same package, you can see that there's only one package available. So only this package is used for both Windows, Mac, and Linux instances. But I think what went wrong, I was not exactly sure. All right, so let me run my function. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Okay, so what is going to happen is that it's going to return all the values that have been put into my table. And let me pull this up over here. We can see that the transaction ID, the amount, and the type has been put out for the first one, the second one, and the third one. Okay, so this was for the publicly accessible RDS instance and accessing it from Lambda, and for the excuse me, for the private one, I'll be making another video. Okay, this is it for this video. Assalamu alaikum.